History teaches us that the close proximity of several ambitious powers necessarily leads to conflict between them. When the Roman Republic began to claim absolute dominance in the Mediterranean basin, it had to contend with equally bellicose states seeking to dominate the region. We have already written about the devastating Punic Wars that shook the ancient world for more than a century. But in addition to the rich Carthage, the Republic neighbored with the heirs of the ancient Hellenic civilization, significantly surpassing the barbarian Rome on the level of culture, education, and had a rich and heroic history. But epochs change each other. From archaic Greek polis and kingdoms, military and political hegemony passed to the young and aggressive Roman state. This is what we are going to talk about this time. Greece was a disparate land, united only by a common history and the heritage of Hellenic civilization. Social stratification was growing. Popular uprisings and conflicts between cities were brewing and flaring up. Throughout the 3rd century before Christmas, the rulers of several states fought bloody wars for power in the region. The main participants in this Game of Thrones were Macedonia, the Aetolian and Achaean unions. Macedonia, as we know, reached its historical dawn under King Alexander. Alexander the Great was able to reach as far as India, but to build a stable empire he was not able, as well as his followers, to hold the conquered territories. Macedonia for some time passed from the power of a Epirus king to Thracian and vice versa, then was subjected to a devastating raid of Celtic tribes. Until the Macedonian throne was occupied by King Philip V, an experienced diplomat and talented military commander, trying to emulate his great predecessors. The Aetolian League originated as an association of 3 Aetolian clans, and became a major political entity, including even the Peloponnesian and Thessalian cities. Aetolia was a region of Middle Greece, bordered by Acarnania to the west, Locrida and Dorida to the east, and the lands of the Dolopians and Amphilochians to the north. In the south of Aetolia, according to the myths of the Peloponnesian War, the cities of Pleuron and Calydon were once located. At the head of the Aetolian alliance was a chosen leader who summoned the army by the decree of the Allied Assembly, the Sanhedrin, the word being Greek, not Jewish. The Achaean Union was a union of Greek polities in the Peloponnese. It was formed from the old union of Achaean cities. Continuous civil and class warfare between the polis forced the rulers to unite to avoid being conquered by a stronger neighbor. Despite the absence of a central polis, the Achaean Union had its own professional army. However, part of its expenses were covered by the Ptolemaic dynasty, thus trying to influence the political life of Greece from Egypt. Thus, if the Aetolian and Achaean unions historically claimed supremacy in the Hellenic lands, calling themselves the descendants of the ancient people, Macedonia, by right of the conquests of King Alexander. It is worth noting that the ongoing confrontation did not prevent the development of production, trade, slave and cultural relations between the states. It must be assumed that the Greek kings were aware of the danger emanating from their young neighbor, aggressive and very effective in military terms of the Roman Republic. Relations between Rome and Greece were extremely hostile. Greek lands were formally independent, but the aristocracy now and then turned to the Roman Senate to solve their problems, which gave an excuse for interference in the affairs of the country from the outside. As a result, the Senate came to the conclusion that there would be no sustainable peace or order in Greece until the cities would not come under the authority of Rome. The Greeks, for their part, were very active in provoking Rome, not fully realizing how well-oiled, motivated, and powerful a military machine they were dealing with. The Macedonian Wars. The Macedonian Wars were fought for half a century and allowed Rome to gain control of the entire eastern part of the Mediterranean basin. While Rome was embroiled in a ruinous conflict with Carthage, Philip V decided to fight for Greece and expand his territories to the west. According to the Greek historian Polybius, the Macedonian king was greatly influenced by Demetrius of Pharos, a general who ruled Illyria and had been defeated by the Romans during the Illyrian Wars. Demetrius advised Philip to enter into an alliance with Carthage, and the Macedonian king was quickly flattered by the possible prospects. The removal of Rome returned the Greeks' monopoly on maritime trade. However, for war with the Republic, the king needed to protect the rear and stop the war with the Aetolian and Achaean alliances. Peace with the Aetolians was made on the coast, near Naupactus. Philip devoted to building a fleet. Not having enough resources to build heavy warships, the Macedonian king decided to bet on maneuverable landing craft, lembas. If necessary, the ships could evade the battle at sea, and the Romans were more concerned about the war with the fleet of Carthage. When the Romans suffered a serious defeat at Cannae, Philip sent ambassadors to the camp of the Carthaginian commander Hannibal with a proposal for an alliance. Hannibal realized that the opening of a second front in the east would further shake the Republic, and Carthage had no plans to expand into Hellas proper. The alliance was concluded, but Philip's ambassadors and Hannibal's accompanying ambassadors were captured by the Romans on their way to Macedonia, and the plot was uncovered. Union of Carthage and Macedonia caused in Rome quite justified panic, and then an indignation. To anger the stern leaders of the Republic and patriotic-minded Senate strongly should not have. Consul Publius Valerius Flaccus was charged with overseeing the Macedonian fleet and keeping Philip within the borders of his kingdom. Philip attempted to invade Illyria, the Balkan Peninsula, from the sea, captured Auric and besieged Apollonius. The Roman legions reacted quickly to the Greek military campaign and promptly drove Philip's army off the peninsula. Philip fled to Macedonia, abandoning his army and fleet to their fate. This was the end of the First Macedonian War. The Second Macedonian War. As we remember, Rome successfully won the Second Punic War, after which the Senate decided to increase its influence in the Balkans. The reason for declaring war on Macedonia was the violation of the treaty, according to which Philip V could not conclude alliances and fight with allies of Rome. The decisive moment was the performance on the side of Rome first Aetolian, and then Achaean alliances. The war with Rome was extremely unpopular in Macedonia, and opposition against the king was growing inside the country. In 197 Roman troops for the first time faced in open field battle with the Macedonian phalanx at Kinauscephalos. Proconsul Titus Quinctius Flamininus inflicted a crushing defeat on Philippus, proving the tactical superiority of the chess formation of legions against a line. The Macedonian phalanx split into two, forcing the hilly terrain. While the right wing moved forward, the left wing was just lining up for battle. Flaminius's war elephants pierced the left flank, after which the invincible legionaries finally drove the phalanx back. As a result of the defeat, Philip pledged to give Rome his fleet, withdrew garrisons from Greek cities. His army and political power were severely limited. Macedonia was nominally declared free, but in fact became a Roman colony with external administration. Third Macedonian War. Philip V died, after which his ambitious and talented son Perseus took the Macedonian throne. The young ruler married the daughter of the Syrian king, made an alliance with Epirus and the tribes of Illyria and Thrace. He decided to restore the former power of Macedonia and intended to enlist the support of Greek cities in the fight against Rome. The Senate was extremely concerned about the strengthening of Macedonia, declared war on Perseus, the reason for which was a conflict between the young king and the governor of Pergamum. Perseus was not ready for war with the sharply strengthened republic and did not have time to pull all Greece to his side, and the Greek detachments remained auxiliary parts of the Roman legions. At the beginning of the war, Perseus was waiting for success. He defeated Publius Crassus at Larissa and forced the retreat of the Roman army in Illyria and even offered Rome peace on the rights of the winner. Of course, the Senate refused such an offer. Troops under the command of Lucius Aemilius Paul began to push Perseus. June 22 near the city of Pydna was a decisive battle, in which the Roman legions defeated and turned into flight Macedonians. Aemilius Paul spread the legions in the center of the field, and allied troops on the flanks. The Macedonian army lined up in the familiar phalanx, flanked by mercenaries and cavalry. The armies clashed, and the Romans began to break through the Macedonian lines. Taking advantage of the advantage in close combat, the legionaries were armed with shields and short swords against the Macedonian spears. In less than an hour, the phalanx was defeated. Perseus fled the battlefield, but was overtaken by the Romans and taken prisoner. 20,000 Macedonian soldiers were killed and 11,000 wounded. At this, Macedonia as an independent state was destroyed for many centuries. The territory was divided into different cities, polises. Completely regulating the life of citizens, it was possible to acquire property, to conclude marriages only within one polis. All foreign policy was governed in the name of the Senate and the people of Rome. Thus, of the free Greek lands, only the Achaean Union remained. The Achaean War. With the fall of Macedonia, Rome no longer needed the help of the Achaean alliance, and the Senate found it unnecessary to have a separate political force in the Peloponnese. Moreover, the leadership of the Achaean Union goes to parties hostile to Rome. The struggle for the lands of the Achaean Union was quite long and tense. Rome had to play on the social and economic contradictions of Hellenic cities, shaking the alliance relations. The reason for the beginning of the war itself was the conflict between the allies and Sparta. The Achaean party of Democritus, Critolaus and Dei tried to join Sparta to the Union, to which the Spartans turned for help to Rome. Consul Lucius Aurelius Orestes, who arrived in Corinth, on behalf of the Senate announced the exclusion from the union of the Achaean cities unrelated to the Achaeans by blood, including Sparta and Argos. This decision of Rome relegated the Achaean Union to the level of a secondary state, not capable of serious foreign policy actions. After the departure of the Roman ambassadors, a series of revolts and revolutions engulfed the cities of the Achaean alliance. The commander of the allied forces, Dias, took radical measures. He mobilized all the forces of the country, announced a general military draft, introduced a military tax. This policy further shook the unstable position of the Greek society. Achaean oligarchy began to see in the Roman Republic to get rid of the inefficient and outdated system of government. However, the war between Rome and the Achaean alliance was not long and bloody. The Greeks quickly lost Thermopylae, were defeated at Scarthaeus in Lochares. The general battle took place at Leucopetra. The Achaean army, twice the size of the Roman army, was defeated, scattered and partially captured. As punishment for their insolence to the Republic, the Romans burned Corinth. Consul Mummius slaughtered all Corinthian men. Women and children were sold into slavery, and all movable property and works of art were taken to Rome. Thus the Achaean Union repeated the fate of Macedonia, and for many, many years became part of the empire created by the Latins. The accession of the Aetolian Union was given to Rome with little blood. During the Second Macedonian War, the Aetolians fought on the side of Rome. Aetolian warriors flanked the Battle of Cynocephalae, for which the Union was given Lochares, Phocis and Ambracia. But the claims of the Aetolians proved too great, and as a result of the conflict with Rome, the army of the Aetolian alliance was defeated at Thermopylae. Aetolians were forced to ask for peace, under the terms of which they paid Rome 500 talents of contribution and recognized the supreme authority of the Senate. The result of the wars was that Greece and Macedonia were finally turned into Roman provinces headed by a governor appointed by the Senate, only Athens and Sparta, rather not out of mercy, but paying tribute to their former greatness, was allowed to keep their laws. Greece disappeared from world political history for 2 millennia.